Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Abletontips. My name is Guido. I'm from the YouTube channel called Cats and Beats. And today I'm going to be going over vocal mixing because Production Music Live has released a awesome vocal pack. We have in this vocal pack dry stems and wet stems. How nice is that? So we got phrases, long and short, and then if you open it up, you actually have it saying like, it's in D minor, it's 124 beats per minute, and it's all professionally recorded with a little bit of sexiness thrown in there with the wet signals. So dry, wet signals. Why am I excited about dry and wet signals? Well, wet signals are nice when you're producing to quickly throw an idea together. And dry signals is when you put your mixing cap on and go, okay, what does my song sound like? And can I maybe mix the dry signal so that it fits better than the wet signal that's given from Production Music Live, right? Sometimes the wet signal will just go poop and it fits, but sometimes you need to think a little bit and go, what can I do to make it better? Now, I have here a whole chain for you that you're going to be able to use, but before we get into all of this, let's actually have a listen to this. So here we have the wet signal. This is going to be wet from Production Music Live, and this is the dry signal with the processing on it. But let's just have a listen to start with, and we'll listen with the wet.
My heart in my chest, it is beating, beating, beating for you. Feel my heart in my chest, it is beating, beating, beating.
Now, I know that in solo, you might be thinking, Jesus Christ, Guido, what is wrong with you? That is so wet. Insert any type of wetness joke here that you want to. But you need to understand when you're mixing vocals that the vocals are going to be in context with the song. And if you actually listen to the song itself, it's very wet as well. So if you would pop in very dry vocals, then it's just going to sound a little bit weird. So that's why you just kind of have to put your hat on and think, okay, what kind of time-based effects can I use to make the signal wetter? And should I put lots of reverb on my my dry thing, or should I put more delay because there's, no delays there? And you start thinking about it, but I have a nice decision-making thing for you. So let's go over the chain so that when you get it, you can actually make sense of it. And I'll start with the fun stuff first, and then we'll slowly move to the more boring stuff, okay? Like compression, de-essing, EQing, sidechaining, that kind of stuff. But right now, this box is probably going to be the biggest difference maker for you that you just need to kind of understand on how to use. So we got this little vocal box here. We have the dry version, we got a delay version, and we got a reverb version. Now, the dry version is just going to be absolutely no processing whatsoever. The delay version is going to be 100% wet. Remember that, with a sidechain that you're going to sidechain to your own vocal. So you go sidechain and to your own vocal, back to dry, okay? Now, the reason we do this is that once the guy starts singing and we just have delay and reverb going 100% wet with absolutely no sidechaining, meaning volume ducking to its own vocal, it will sound like a bit of a mess. I can actually show you this as well. Let's make a button. Number 5, we can just listen to the wet vocals and I can turn them on and off.
Feel my heart in my chest, it is beating, beating, beating.
Right now, it just sounds like a massive mess, right? So if I turn it on,
My heart in my chest, it is beating, beating, beating.
off.
My heart in my chest, it is beating.
I know it's subtle, but it's basically, if you do about 5 dB of gain reduction on these two channels, what will happen is that 5 dB of that reverbed or delayed channel will be turned down. All right. So it's a really important thing to understand to get very wet vocals, but at the same time, the ability to actually hear what the guy is actually saying instead of him just standing in a massive ass room, because that's what the reverb is. Okay, now you can replace the delay or the reverb with any other delay or reverb or any other time-based effects plugin that you like. Just remember 100% wet and plop a little sidechain on it. Also, a little sneaky trick here. Make sure that the sidechain release time on your delay is going to be set a little bit slower, because then it just kind of builds up and goes down with the track. It sounds sexy. Okay, now another sexy thing is this thing, Spacemaker. Now, when you're going to be opening up the Spacemaker, it'll open up like this for you. And then with this thing, what you can do is you can drag and drop this to where frequencies are colliding. So generally speaking, when you're working with vocals and at the same time you want to have frequencies happening over here like leads, for instance, what you can do with this is you can actually set this gain knob so that there's going to be gain reduction on the channel when the vocal is singing back. So for instance, if I have this track here, I can click, drag, drop onto any other channel. So let's just say, clicking, dragging, dropping onto the instruments version over here. Every single time the singer will sing,
Feel my heart in my chest. It is beating, beating, beating for you. Feel my heart.
you get a tiny little bit of space. So we're getting about like 4 dB of gain reduction over here. You could set it to more, because you can just use the scale knob over here.
Feel my heart.
But then it starts sounding weird. Also, a very cool thing is vocals are almost always in the middle. So if you just put this in mid-side
Feel
mode,
my heart in my chest.
you can now almost always have a clear sounding track. But, have a little play. Don't do too much.
Feel my heart in my chest. It is beating, beating, beating.
I'll turn it on and off.
Feel my heart in my chest. It is beating, beating, beating for you.
So it's a sneaky little thing. And basically set this number 3 specifically to where you're going to have collisions with vocals, which is always going to be about 1.5 kilohertz or so. But basically that's that. So these were the 2 sexy things that you probably don't see every day. But now let's get into the not as sexy things. But you do need to do all this stuff before you can do the fun stuff. Otherwise, it's just going to sound like not bad vocals. So this is actually the most important part, but I know that everybody just wants to know the trick, man. What's the trick? Okay, so let's just move backwards. The first thing that I want to do is, if you're going to be going in the main chorus of a track, so this is you can hear that this is the main part of a song, you can actually use the chorus or the drop, but you can use the chorus to make your vocal sound a tiny little bit wider. Don't go too far, because then it sounds weird.
Feel my heart in my chest.
See, that's just weird. So just do a little
Feel
bit.
my heart in my chest. Feel my heart. Feel my heart.
I think people with very wide speakers will be able to pick that up, but it's just a tiny little bit of width that we put in. And I'd like to put the width at 200%. I know that's crazy, but it just sounds nice to me. So after that, there's going to be a moment in your mix when you're mixing and you're thinking to yourself, are my vocals just on top of the mix, aka are they just too loud? And then you start trying to get the dBs right over here and you're doing lots of volume automation because the vocals are just not sitting in the mix. Then try to put a little bit of a sidechain on the kick drum.
Feel my heart.
If you just have that side chaining going on to turn down on the kick, the whole vocal will go floop and sit into the track. So it's a tiny little
Feel
thing.
my
It's only probably going to be 1 or 2 dB of gain reduction. If you do too much, again, then it's just going to sound just awkward, but that's okay. Now, continuing down the line, slowly getting more and more boring. Listen to the sound of my voice and fall asleep. Anyway, we have an EQ here, but there's a couple of things to note. So normally speaking, when you're going to be recording with a microphone in a dead room, the sound will be a little bit muffly. So it'll be a bit muffled. So what you can do is just take the the lowest, harmonics of the vocal, turn that down a tad, and take the top harmonics of the vocal and turn that up a tad. You can also do the top part with encoding or saturation or just EQ. But there's a lot of little things to be said here, but try just this concept of turning down this part. Maybe you can do it dynamically, and turning up this part. Maybe you do that with saturation. Then you're going to be able to get that super sexy type of voice to come through, or the guy will just sound like a radio type of thing. But this is the general concept. Turn this down, turn that up a tad. Now we're going to go down slowly, falling asleep with the glue compressor. The glue compressor is just going to be a compressor. So compression is literally just volume control. And the most important thing about a compressor is that you need to get your attack and release times to work with the vocal itself. So if I, for instance, would have rap vocals and I would have to accentuate the start of the transient. So if the rapper goes jibba 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 jibba, then I don't want the guy to sound like jubba jubba jubba. I want him to go like that. Then I can set an aggressive compressor so that the start of every thing or word that comes out of his mouth sounds more heavy. But basically you have a slow attack and a fast release. But with this type of vocal, with I kind of want the last part of the vocal to last as long as possible. So I'm compressing the beginning of the track to go, no, you're not allowed to go, because that last parts you're not going to be able to pick up. So I'm going to compress that and then set my release really slow so that at the end of the day, this part of the track gets emphasized. So this part basically turns up to become louder, so that it sounds like a fuller mix, and that it will translate in the mix that the guy was singing with a full, some word, with fullness. Now, you can mix both of these compression types, and you can compress if you want more than 5 dB as well. But if you start compressing more than 5 dB and you have a slow release time, and the release just can't get back, it's just gonna sound like you're turning the track down. So the guy will start singing out really loud at the beginning of a phrase, and then at the end just kind of become quieter and quieter. So I use my range knob so that it can't go beyond 5 dB. Just use your ears a little bit for that. But this is going to be my setting for these type of vocals, which is basically going to be a lot of that is in here. So this is going to work for you as well. Now, slowly getting more boring. We have the De-Esser and we have the EQ8 over here. And this is the beginning of the chain. The reason why we have a De-Esser and an EQ8 is because I want my compressor to compress a clean signal. Specifically, low-end booms that come in from somebody hitting the microphone by accident or breathing down it or whatever. Basically, low-end rumble. I want to cut that out of the track. All right? And I do not want to cut all of it out, just most of it out. So if I would look
Feel
at
my
this,
heart in my chest.
I don't want to do this.
It is beating, beating, beating for you.
I want that low end to still be there. So if you, for instance, see that the vocal is only going to 186 hertz, just divide that by 2 and then go back some more, okay? Because otherwise you're going to end up kind of neutering the sound. Never EQ exactly to what you see, EQ to what you hear. All right. Now, also another little part, what you have with microphones is that we're going to have, lots of low end sounds to this. And then we're also going to have the coming through sometimes, which is the S. You can actually just look at this.
Feel my heart in my chest.
In my chest here. Wait. You can actually see that S. What you could do is just take a little node, find that S, and then the only thing you need to do is go into your De-Esser and write down what that was. So for me, it was 6250 kilohertz. And then with the Q, if the guy has a very specific S, you can specifically cut out the S. So for instance, if the guy had like a super narrow S like this, then you can put your Q up on this one, and then you're basically having a dynamic EQ, but it's not split band, doesn't really matter, but it's constantly turning down on that little S, which is kind of bullshit, to be honest. This whole thing is turning down the entire channel, but it's turning down specifically on that frequency. So it kind of then becomes nice for the compressor not to be doing something stupid. Also, the de-esser, if you're going to be having more trouble with the de-esser, it might be nice to get a split band and then just use something called TDR Nova, and that is going to be a free EQ for you to use. That's going to work a lot more heavy than this de-esser right over here. But it's just the nature of it. Now, that's basically that. But obviously, you need to start thinking, hey, that's great, but what the hell are these things? What you can start doing with when you have phrases like this is you can start, detuning certain phrases as well and having backing vocals. You're going to have relatively the same chain on it, so everything is being cut. Obviously, the de-esser is going to work at a different frequency because these are tuned differently. And you can, emphasize a certain part of the track. So if you have backing vocals and you're finding that your mixed vocals aren't full enough, for instance, then you can put backing vocals that you go with -12 or a different tuning, and then you can only put that little part in it. I do suggest making two backing vocals, one going a little bit to the right, one a little bit to the left, and then having 2 different delay settings as well. And on top of that, just go berserk with your chorus or ensemble or whatever you really want, and then try another time-based effect. Again, sidechain this if you need that pumpy feeling, and then you have something like this. You compare that to the beginning again.
It is beating, beating, beating for you. Feel my heart in my chest.
Yeah, that's basically that. I think the only thing I haven't spoken about is my final trick, which is how do you set the vocal level the best way or like the nicest way? I have this weird thing that I imagine, that song We Will Rock You from Queen? And then we will. If you take away like the main melodics of your track and then set your dry without the spacemaker and things like that. So you have like the bass and that's basically it. Then you just set your vocal like this.
In my chest, it is beating, beating, beating for you.
And then somehow in my head that really makes sense because then I can see just the guy singing on stage with the drums and the bass. And then it's really easy to put the lead back in. At the end of the day, the vocal is going to be the most important thing of your track because that's what everybody is going to be listening to. So make sure to mix right. Make sure to download the vocal chain. Make sure to leave a like and make sure to say, hi, Mr. Bald Guy. No, anyway, I'm going to be heading out. Come over to Cat and Beats as well, the YouTube channel. Lots of fun stuff like this. And take care. Peace out. Much love and have a great day. Bye.
Hi, this video is sponsored by us. If you like these tutorials and want to support the channel, check out our website packed with online courses and professional sound packs. If you want to cut years of your learning curve, check the PML Beginner to Advanced Music Production program for Ableton Live. You will know Ableton inside out and learn how to write, produce, mix and master complete tracks. You learn step by step at your own speed, from an empty file to professional production, as if we're sitting side by side in the studio. Thank you for listening.